For decades, the Queen's private vault beneath Windsor was dismissed as symbolic until now. In a stunning twist, royal lawyers uncovered a secret clause hidden in the Queen's will, locked behind layers of confidentiality, coded references, and restricted access. What they found didn't just shake Camilla, it rewrote the inheritance narrative and catapulted Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, into the heart of a royal storm. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The whispers began as nothing more than murmurs, curious glances exchanged between senior aides, late-night meetings involving royal legal advisors, and a sudden increase in security at the Windsor archives. But what initially appeared to be routine estate proceedings took a sharp, chilling turn when a classified document surfaced during a final audit. It wasn't listed in any known catalogue. No copies existed, just a single envelope, aged yet pristine, marked only with the Queen's initials and a date shockingly written after Camilla's official coronation. That detail alone sent a tremor through the palace walls. Within that envelope lay the clause, a secret so carefully guarded that not even Charles, reportedly, had full knowledge of its depth. The Queen had orchestrated a legal safeguard that bypassed public record, one triggered only by specific posthumous events. As the lawyers broke the wax seal and read its contents in a closed-door session, a name emerged that none of them had expected: Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh. Not as a witness, not as a ceremonial recipient, but as the key figure in a posthumous plan the Queen had hidden from the world. The room fell into stunned silence. One official, according to inside sources, stood up and left immediately, refusing to be part of what he called a constitutional curveball. What followed was a flurry of confusion. Camilla's camp was blindsided. Her senior aides demanded an urgent legal review. Some even suggested foul play or forgery, but the document bore the Queen's unmistakable signature, verified against hundreds of previous documents. The implications were devastating. For Camilla, this clause wasn't just a deviation, it was a betrayal from beyond the grave. Behind the scenes, panic spread like wildfire. The Queen's most trusted archivist reportedly collapsed upon realizing the document had been filed under an untraceable, numerical code, known only to Her Majesty's most intimate circle. Royal protection officers were tasked with ensuring the original clause never left the premises, while digital lawyers worked around the clock to prevent leaks. But they failed. Just days later, excerpts of the clause began to surface in the hands of royal watchers and select members of the press. The leak was subtle at first, cryptic references to a divergent heirloom clause and speculation about Sophie's unusual silence in recent months. But it was enough to ignite a media storm. Suddenly, Sophie was no longer in the background. She was at the center of what insiders were calling the Queen's final chess move. But what exactly had the Queen left her? Jewelry, property, titles? According to sources close to the investigation, it was something far more potent: control over the Queen's symbolic legacy. This was not an act of charity. It was a declaration of trust, executed with surgical precision and hidden in plain sight. The Queen had bypassed the expected line of succession, undermined Camilla's influence, and entrusted Sophie with the most revered and politically delicate pieces of royal history. For Camilla, the shock was immeasurable. This clause didn't just shift possessions, it shifted perception. It rewrote loyalty, it questioned legitimacy, and at its core, it exposed something the monarchy had long tried to suppress. The Queen had never fully given Camilla her heart. But what could Sophie possibly inherit that would shake the very throne Camilla was poised to secure? The answer lay not in gold, but in legacy. The clause didn't grant Sophie land or title, it gave her access to the Queen's personal crown jewel registry. This wasn't about tiaras, it was about power, symbolism, and public perception. What Camilla believed she was entitled to, Sophie now possessed, and it changed everything. The revelation sent tremors through the heart of the monarchy. Buried in the fine print of the Queen's secret clause was an annex, sealed under dual authorization, detailing control over the personal crown jewel registry, a curated selection of pieces reserved not for public display, but for intimate assertion of royal stature. These weren't museum pieces. These were the emblems of power worn during coronations, jubilees, and key state events, items that whispered unspoken messages of continuity, heritage, and authority. Camilla had long operated under the belief that they would be hers. In fact, her team had drafted an internal memo weeks before the clause was discovered, scheduling a press release to subtly announce her assumption of the Queen's personal favourites. It was supposed to mark her silent but symbolic triumph until everything changed. The Queen's handwritten notes within the clause carried a startling weight. In unmistakable cursive, she referred to Sophie as the keeper of my symbols, a phrase so intimate, so pointed, that it shattered Camilla's narrative overnight. It wasn't just a decision, it was a declaration. The monarch, who had reigned with an iron sense of tradition and duty, had silently chosen the one royal she believed would guard her legacy with dignity, not ego. Sophie's name was written with care, underlined, and followed by one sentence: "Let them speak not through words, but through what she wears." And with that, Sophie inherited something far more commanding than a throne. She inherited the monarchy's silent language. Camilla, blindsided and humiliated, reportedly confronted her inner circle with fury. Sources close to the palace confirmed she had already posed with several pieces for an internal portfolio meant for release in the royal annual report. Those photos, they said, have since been pulled. In contrast, Sophie has remained silent. No public statements, no interviews. Yet her appearance at a recent royal service, wearing the Queen's signature sapphire brooch, spoke volumes. Palace insiders whispered that the Queen never trusted Camilla to uphold the deeper values of monarchy. The quiet resilience, the dignified restraint, the unswerving loyalty. Camilla represented a break in the line, Sophie, a return to it. The deeper meaning of the jewels became clear. This was not a matter of sparkle, but of story. The Queen had used them throughout her life, not just to dazzle, but to deliver messages without speaking. Each piece marked an era, a promise, a stand. Now, with Sophie in possession, those same messages would echo anew through a woman whose very presence challenged Camilla's rise. The public began to notice, analysts speculated, commentators clashed. But beneath the noise, one truth settled in. Sophie wasn't wearing the Queen's jewels, she was carrying the Queen's voice. But this was just the glittering surface. Behind it was a deeper betrayal that Camilla never saw coming. As Sophie stepped into a role never meant for her, echoes of Diana's legacy haunted the corridors. The Queen's will referenced a private letter written days after Diana's funeral, and in that moment, the true reason behind Sophie's rise and Camilla's fall came to light. Buried in the legal jargon and ceremonial formalities of the Queen's posthumous instructions was a quiet appendix, one that spoke not in declarations, but in emotion. Titled "Only in Memory of the Pain Endured in 1997, the clause contained no mention of titles, no list of assets, and no grand declarations. Instead, it alluded to loss, public heartbreak, and a monarchy shattered by its own silence. That year, of course, marked the death of Princess Diana, and what the Queen had left behind in that appendix wasn't just reflection, it was revelation. For the first time, it was confirmed that the Queen had written a private letter following Diana's funeral. A letter that wasn't shared with the public, nor her own family, but sealed with specific instructions for its disclosure, only upon the execution of her own will. Its contents weren't fully released, but one detail slipped through the cracks. Diana's death had marked a turning point in the Queen's view of loyalty, compassion, and the future role of women within the crown. This revelation reshaped everything. The parallels between Sophie and Diana were suddenly impossible to ignore. Both women had entered the royal family without fanfare, both had struggled with public scrutiny, and both had displayed a strength that the monarchy rarely acknowledged: quiet, steadfast, and unshakably loyal. Where Diana had challenged the monarchy with raw emotion, Sophie had worked within it, earning admiration not through defiance, but through consistency. Sources close to the Queen revealed that in the days after Diana's death, she summoned Sophie not for protocol, but for perspective. That private meeting, never photographed or confirmed until now, lasted nearly 2 hours, and according to those who later uncovered the transcripts and diary fragments, it was during that conversation the Queen began to see Sophie not as Edward's wife, but as something more. a stabilizing force, a moral compass. Camilla, on the other hand, represented the opposite. Her path to power had been turbulent, controversial, and for many, unforgivable. Her relationship with Charles was steeped in scandal, and though public acceptance eventually followed, it was never complete. The clause in the Queen's will reignited that unspoken tension. It reopened wounds the monarchy had desperately tried to close. Camilla's rise, seen through the lens of this newly revealed letter, now felt conditional, temporary even, as if the Queen had allowed it publicly, but reserved her private trust for someone else, someone safer, someone who wouldn't overshadow the memory of Diana but quietly honor it. The timing of the Queen's clause was no coincidence. It came after Camilla's ascension, but before the public fully embraced her reign. It was a pause, a royal hesitation, and in that hesitation Sophie stepped forward. Not because she demanded it, but because the Queen had willed it, guided not by protocol, but by conscience. Sophie was the moral reset, a living bridge between the Crown's darkest sorrow and its quiet hope. The Crown had spoken softly, but its message was thunderous. And the next move wasn't legal, it was personal. Camilla didn't stay silent. Behind closed doors, she confronted King Charles with fury, betrayal, and disbelief. Witnesses claim the Queen's portrait had to be removed from the room because Camilla couldn't bear to look at her. What began as a private conversation quickly exploded into something far more volatile. Camilla, blindsided by the revelation that she was the recipient of the Queen's most sacred trust, stormed into the King's private quarters, demanding the truth. Her voice reportedly echoed through the halls, sharp and shaking. "You knew she would do this to me," she hissed, her accusation slicing deeper than any formal betrayal. Charles didn't deny it. According to senior aides who later leaked fragments of the exchange, the King had indeed been briefed by the Queen's legal team months before her death. He had read the clause. He had known of the regist. He had remained silent, and that silence was, to Camilla, the ultimate betrayal not just by the Queen but by her husband. The palace walls, usually so expertly soundproofed against drama, couldn't contain the aftershocks. Staff were instructed to avoid the West Wing. PR managers were seen entering crisis meetings without a word. Camilla's communications secretary, once so bold in guiding her public image, reportedly broke down in tears after being told to retract an upcoming public appearance. Camilla, insiders said, threatened to withdraw from all royal duties until the clause was formally reviewed. But it wasn't just about the jewels or legacy. It was personal, deeply personal. She had spent decades clawing her way from scorned mistress to crowned queen, and now, in the eyes of the late monarch, it meant nothing. Charles, ever the reluctant peacemaker, attempted to calm her. He reminded her of their journey, their sacrifices, their mutual isolation during the Queen's coldest years. But it was no use. Camilla was inconsolable. Her rage wasn't just directed at the Queen, it turned inward. The shame, the humiliation, the realization that even at the pinnacle of power, she remained, in the Queen's eyes, an outsider. The Queen's portrait, which had adorned the room for years, was taken down shortly after the confrontation, not because of logistics, but because Camilla reportedly said, "I won't be judged by her in this room too." There was no reversing the clause, no legal loophole that could erase the Queen's final decision. Her will was ironclad, witnessed and signed by advisors whose loyalty remained unshaken. For Camilla, that reality was suffocating. She had lost the one endorsement that mattered, not from the people, not from Parliament, but from the woman whose throne she now shared, yet whose trust she never truly held. And while Charles retreated into quiet reflection, palace aides scrambled to contain the fallout. But outside those walls, the storm had already begun to thunder. As Camilla grappled with humiliation, Sophie was summoned by a source no one expected. In a rare gesture, Princess Anne invited Sophie for a private walk on the Balmoral grounds. No press, no cameras, just two women bound by the Queen's final wish and united in a cause the monarchy had kept buried for decades. The invitation was discreet, handwritten, and delivered through a trusted aide. Sophie didn't ask questions. She knew better. Balmoral, the Queen's sanctuary in life and legacy in death, was sacred ground. What took place during that walk would never be recorded, never officially acknowledged. But those who witnessed it from a distance described something hauntingly profound. Two figures, side by side, moving slowly through the wooded paths, their expressions unreadable until the moment Sophie stopped, turned away, and wiped tears from her face. The conversation between Anne and Sophie was long, nearly 3 hours, uninterrupted by protocol or security. Palace aides, usually tasked with accompanying every step of a senior royal, were told explicitly to stay behind. No one followed, no one dared. Anne had always been a fortress of discretion, but beneath her stoic exterior burned a fierce loyalty to the Queen, to the Crown, and now, unmistakably, to Sophie. Her history with both Camilla and Sophie was no secret. She had tolerated Camilla, respected her position, but never embraced her. With Sophie, it was different. There was mutual recognition, two women who had served, endured, and upheld their roles without spectacle or scandal. As the wind swept across the Highlands, Anne reached into her coat and handed Sophie a small envelope. Written across the front in the Queen's unmistakable script were the words, "For when the time comes." Sophie accepted it without a word. It was understood that whatever lay inside was never meant for public eyes nor for hurried reading. It was a transfer of trust, of duty. When the walk ended, the two women parted in silence. No public embrace, no comment to the press. They left in separate vehicles, avoiding eye contact with the photographers who had caught wind of the meeting, but were kept far from the estate's inner grounds. And yet, the silence surrounding the encounter only amplified its weight. Rumours erupted almost immediately. Had Anne known about the clause all along? Had the Queen confided in her daughter before even involving her lawyers? There was no confirmation, of course, but the signs were there. Anne's immediate calm after the will's revelation, her refusal to defend Camilla publicly, her sudden appearance beside Sophie at smaller royal engagements. It was as if the Queen had not just planned the inheritance, but prepared her daughter to protect it. Insiders whispered that Anne had become the guardian of the Queen's final vision, a role she carried, not with fanfare, but with purpose. And in Sophie, she saw not a substitute queen, but the living embodiment of everything their mother had hoped the monarchy could still become: principled, poised, and quietly indomitable. As whispers turned into headlines, Camilla's influence began to visibly retreat, while Sophie's presence, though unspoken, loomed larger in the public imagination. And through it all, Anne remained silent, her expression unchanged. She didn't need to speak. Her walk with Sophie had already said everything. But while Anne and Sophie honoured the Queen's will, others plotted to erase it. Within the plush halls of Clarence House, whispers of rebellion surged. Camilla's allies, advisors, former courtiers, even extended family allegedly conspired to reverse the Queen's clause. And their first target? The royal legal team. The atmosphere turned electric, almost volatile, as Camilla's inner circle scrambled to salvage what remained of her legacy. For decades they had built her image brick by brick, from mistress to consort to crowned queen. And in a matter of hours, the Queen's posthumous clause had demolished that foundation. Desperation set in. Leaked memos from Clarence House revealed high-level discussions about contesting the clause on grounds of emotional manipulation, a risky legal strategy that implied the Queen may have been influenced in her final days. It was a bold accusation, not only dangerous but bordering on sacrilegious. Still, some believed it was their only hope. Meetings were held in secret, coded messages sent across secured channels. One former legal aide, suspected of favouring Sophie's quiet rise, was abruptly dismissed. The official reason was unauthorized correspondence. But insiders knew better. He had become a liability. Even more alarming were the reports of internal communications mysteriously vanishing from Clarence House servers. Emails deleted, meeting transcripts missing, cloud archives wiped clean. An IT audit was quickly ordered, but no one could explain how such data was erased so precisely and so quickly. The panic was palpable. Camilla's most loyal advisors feared that every hour of silence allowed Sophie's presence to solidify further in the eyes of the public, and worse within palace hierarchy. But it wasn't just paranoia. The monarchy's future was being redrawn before their very eyes, and they were powerless to stop it. Prince William, who had maintained a measured distance throughout the storm, finally stepped into the fray. His warning to Clarence's house was short, sharp, and carried weight. "Challenge this," he reportedly said, "and you challenge the Queen herself." His message was unmistakable. He wouldn't tolerate a public war over the will, not now, not ever. And with that, Clarence's house was backed into a corner. Camilla's stepchildren, already bristling from the fallout, advised her to make a public statement to take control of the narrative. But Camilla refused. She knew the public wouldn't rally behind her against the ghost of Queen Elizabeth. Any attempt to paint herself as the victim would backfire. Instead, she disappeared from the spotlight, retreating behind palace gates. Meanwhile, Sophie did the opposite, but in the most royal way imaginable. She said nothing. She did nothing. She simply appeared, at church, at quiet functions, always flanked by Princess Anne and her daughter Lady Louise. It was a trio the press couldn't ignore, and with every silent outing, every composed wave, every wordless presence, Sophie's place grew firmer. Not because she fought for it, but because she no longer needed to. Just as tensions threatened to explode, a forgotten figure emerged with a memory too powerful to ignore. Lady Louise, once shielded from royal drama, shocked the nation in a private interview transcript leaked to the press. Her recollection of the Queen's final conversation painted Sophie not as a surprise heir, but as the intended one all along. The leak was never meant to happen. The interview had been recorded off the record, tucked away as part of a quiet oral history project meant for the royal archives. But one line spoken with raw vulnerability by Lady Louise changed everything. "You'll understand when your mother steps into the light." Those were the Queen's exact words, according to Louise, spoken gently the night before her final public appearance. It wasn't advice. It was prophecy. And in that moment, the entire inheritance saga shifted. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This wasn't accidental. This had been planned, felt, and deeply personal. The Queen hadn't simply respected Sophie. She had prepared her for this. The story unraveled like wildfire. The Queen had reportedly handed Sophie a small box the same night containing personal letters, trinkets, and a pendant that had belonged to Queen Mary. No royal titles, no press releases, no pomp, just meaning. Louise, watching from a distance, said she never fully understood the weight of that exchange until the will surfaced. She recalled how her mother didn't sleep that night, how she sat silently at her writing desk. "Ho!" Her hands trembled. How she whispered, "I have to get this right." Louise's words were quiet, but their impact was thunderous. Her interview shattered the illusion that Sophie was merely a fortunate bystander. She had carried the burden long before the public ever knew it existed. The palace, alarmed by the growing media frenzy, immediately tried to contain the fallout. Requests were made to the publication to pull the transcript. Legal language was deployed, but it was too late. The clip had been shared, the words had been read, and the public had chosen its side. Hashtags exploded across social platforms. Hashtag Queen Sophie trended for days. Hashtag Crown Rewritten followed closely. Opinion polls shifted dramatically. Camilla, once tolerated, now seemed like the past. Sophie, steady and silent, emerged as the future. And at the center of it all, Louise, the daughter, once kept out of palace headlines, became the unexpected voice of the Queen's truth. But this wasn't about social media approval. It was about the emotional clarity the Queen had left behind. Through her granddaughter's memories, through her final gift to Sophie, through the moments that were never meant to be public, Her Majesty had drawn a line in history, one that couldn't be redacted, challenged, or ignored. And while some in the palace scrambled to suppress, others began to yield. Quiet nods, subtle gestures, shifting loyalties, and with the public now aware, the Crown had one final move to make, one that would forever alter the power dynamic at its core. In a televised Christmas message, King Charles stood alone but not in silence. With carefully chosen words, he addressed the Queen's claws. And in doing so, he shocked the world by confirming Sophie's new title, cementing what Camilla believed was hers into the hands of another. The room was silent as Charles appeared, his expression measured, his voice steady. It was not a moment of grandeur, but of reckoning. Gone were the typical platitudes. There were no nostalgic anecdotes, no hollow reassurances. Instead, he turned directly to the matter that had engulfed the monarchy in weeks of whisper, tension, and speculation. "It is my solemn duty," he began, "to uphold the final wishes of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Her vision for the future of this family and this institution was unwavering even in her final days." That one sentence dismantled every lingering doubt. The clause was real. The Queen's choice had been deliberate. And more than anything, it had been final, he continued, his tone growing more personal. "There are those who serve not for recognition or reward, but out of a deep, enduring loyalty to the crown. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, is such a woman, a figure of rare grace, discretion, and strength. She has stood beside this family in shadows and in silence. And now, she will carry forward the legacy that my mother cherished most." Then came the announcement, unexpected and without precedent. "It is my honor to confer upon her the role of royal steward of the Queen's legacy." A title never before heard, a role never before seen. But in that moment, it was as though a crown had been placed not on Sophie's head, but over her entire journey. Camilla was not mentioned, not once. Her absence from the speech was not accidental. It was strategic. The message was loud in its silence. The Queen's favour, the King's endorsement, the people's support had all shifted. And yet Sophie's response was no press statement, no interview. The very next morning, she appeared in public unannounced, flanked by Princess Anne and Lady Louise. On her coat, delicately pinned, was the Queen Mother's brooch, a piece of history, a quiet thunderclap. She said nothing. She simply walked through the gates of Windsor Castle, escorted by the two women who had stood by her from the beginning. The image was undeniable. The power had transferred not through decree or spectacle, but through trust, through legacy, through quiet revolution. Within hours, the monarchy's inner workings began to shift. Offices were reassigned, private roles restructured. Behind palace doors, the balance of influence tilted unmistakably in Sophie's direction. What began as a buried clause had become a crown of its own kind, earned not through inheritance, but through endurance. And while Camilla retreated further from public view, Sophie emerged not just as a duchess or consort, but as a custodian of the Queen's essence. The people saw it, the palace felt it, and for the first time the monarchy's future seemed wrapped not in tradition, but in transformation. And as the palace gates closed behind her, one truth echoed louder than ever. Some legacies are earned in silence, and some crowns are never worn on the eed but over the heart. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.